Hello, everyone. We are very pleased to have John Pelant with us today. John is the CTO of CWT and a member of its leadership executive team. John is at the forefront of helping CWT deliver its 3.0 strategy. Hi, John. Welcome to the show. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Great, thank you, and I'm happy to join you for the conversation.
Fantastic. So I think let's just dive into it. And the first question I love to ask at a time like this is, what do you see as the new normal for us in these times of COVID and increasingly changing landscape?
Yeah, I think so. The pandemic has demanded kind of a whole new layer of real-time data in how companies look at and manage the health and safety of their employees. Along with that, a whole new layer of health data, which will be a focus I see for several years coming. And, travel management companies are working with their customers to strike that right balance of what is the traveler's personal data and how you protect that privacy, but making sure that they can also look out for the safety of their travelers, and bringing that forward together and making sure that we have that right mix and the clarity is going to be very important going forward. And that in our industry had been important prior with world events that had taken place, but it has become much more at the forefront now as we look forward and making sure that the companies that they work with in the travel management space are able to be available 24/7 through digital channels and through personal contact channels, and making sure that that mix is there so that when a traveler books travel, they have the confidence in where they're going, they have the right information that they need, and they know somebody like a CWT is looking out for them as they're on their journey.
Very interesting point when you are talking about the differentiation between personal and public data and how that entire space is managed. So given this new normal that we are facing, what are the trends that you are seeing, at least towards the opening up of travel again? I know that we went on basically a year without no travel, and things are hopefully starting to open up soon. So what are the trends in that space?
Yeah, so we're hearing loud and clear from our customers that they're looking to get back and meet face to face. And the gradual easing of those restrictions and making sure that person-to-person meetings, events can take place positively, and safety and security obviously is at the forefront of that. We're starting to see encouraging trends in what we call domestic travel. So within countries, there's trends that are on the uprise there. And now with some of the variants taking place, you're seeing some variation in what's happening there. International travel is definitely a little bit more tricky and will take longer to restart. The countries are, kind of introducing the concept around where it's safe to travel and then come back to their native country. But that's fluid, and there's still questions that are out there around the stability of that as we go forward. But definitely hearing from the customers that they see the value in that face-to-face. I think we all have seen value in video conferencing and the uprise that has happened there, and some companies were already there and moving forward. There's value there. But there's also that human connection that is so important that people are really looking to get back to.
Yes, interesting point you raised regarding virtual meetings, and then again in rather face-to-face meetings that were the norm before. So we've again gone through a very rapid phase of forced digitalization, for the lack of a better term. So do you see overall businesses in the future going to cut down on travel and in-person meetings, or do you see a more of a hybrid kind of a solution that we are going to see going forward?
I think that, the nature of the company is going to play a big part in that. When we look at Salesforce within a company and as they get out and need to connect with prospects, and that the human connection in those meetings are going to be very important. Some of the internal meetings in the past that had taken place in person may very well stay virtual in some cases. And we look at, same day travel in and out. Is that going to stay the same or raise? But the international travel, the making sure those connections are there, we definitely are hearing loud and clear are going to be important. Now, the hybrid piece is very interesting because when we look at what we term meetings and events within CWT, where you look at larger gatherings or some of the tech conferences that will happen that have 10,000 people attending, the hybrid model there, I think, has been a really good step forward for the overall industry and how they look at that. If you take CWT as an example, we've had in the nature of 75,000 people we've connected through a virtual and hybrid type of solution. And I think what that enables is people to get together in the same place, but some that they can't do that, they can attend via that hybrid or that virtual model as well. And so I think a good mix of that going forward is what we will see, and see how those trends continue.
It sounds interesting, right? So you have more people being able to join these conferences and being able to join these larger events.
And I think that increases the outreach of some of those companies, right? And maybe those are people that wouldn't have traveled in the past to those events anyways, and so you can bring them in, but you still have the people that want to be in the room are in the room.
Right. Makes sense. Now, perhaps a kind of a little bit of a lightning rod kind of a question, but it's on everybody's mind right now, is vaccine passports. So we've been hearing a lot over the last year about vaccine passports coming up. So a couple of questions just around that. Do you see that as something that is going to happen? Do you see global acceptance of something like that?
Yeah, and we touched on it a little bit earlier around kind of that personal data and the privacy of that is going to play in it. I think anytime that you have an area like this where you see a need and the ability to expand technology helping people, it will be an interesting crossroads because there will be many players that try to get into that space because they see a need. Now, there is a lot at play here when you talk about governments and what that represents for their country, their people, and what that acceptance rate looks like. We have a real need to have that come together and make sure that ease of travel is allowed through what that solution may be. And so I think each of those pieces, and that's why it becomes such a lightning rod, is how do you get an acceptance on a global basis, let alone each country? We've seen even within countries trying to put together that solution. And so I think that will continue to evolve. And I think we see a real need for the various players, and that's the companies, the governments, as well as the airlines and the providers of content to come together on what a solution like that may look. And I think it's going to continue to evolve. And for me, the vaccine passport is, specific around COVID right now, but there very well may be a need in the future to make sure that we have a path forward for the long run.
That makes sense. But an interesting question that pops up here is when we are talking about personal data, right? So you've got HIPAA in the US, you've got GDPR and other such privacy laws. How do you tie in so many different type of regulations into something like this where it becomes public information for the most part? How is the data going to be managed?
Yeah, and I think that's
whose onus is it?
That's where the complexity comes in, right? Does the data need to stay within a country based on what those regulations may be? Who has access to that data and who can see it? And that's where the complexity around what a technology solution would bring to that, as well as the regulations for the country, for the individual traveler. That's where the challenge will become in how we can make sure that across all of this. Data
Right.
is stored at a proper level, and probably only the minimum that needs to be used to be able to make that an easy solution for a traveler, but protect others around.
Sure. And whose onus does this fall on? Is it going to be, or do you foresee it being more governmental or more a public-private partnership for a model like this?
I think therein lies the challenge, and who will kind of come to the forefront around that ownership. And our government's looking out for the people living in their country and making sure that those pieces are there. I think there will be private companies that try to come forward and make sure that they can fill that space. But that
Right.
will be a future battleground of how does that storage, how does that information get handled? And quite frankly, we don't have those answers yet. That needs to play out as we go forward. And we'll need to come together, and there will be a lot there that needs to be sorted through.
So you've got interesting times ahead.
Yeah, absolutely. And, I think it also brings to mind around what we call duty of care and
Right.
what that means to companies. And this has existed before COVID around world events and making sure that a company understands where their employees are around the world, where they've traveled to, if there's a world event that happens. And right now, it's very specific around COVID and where hotspots may be and what vaccination rates look like in countries. That comes together, and you look at a travel management company like CWT and what can we bring to those companies and their travelers from a trust standpoint, and making sure that when a traveler books travel, they can speak to an expert and or use the digital channel that has the information there, that they can make choices based on their own risk profile and what they need to take care of. But then the company also has that information. So that has and will continue to evolve the solutions around letting employees make those decisions and making sure that they're working with a travel management company that has that information and can share if there's a world event and what happens and where those travelers are around the world. Because we look at it as our duty to make sure that those travelers have well-informed information and can make those decisions based on what their company
Right.
policies may be. And making sure that we can bring all of that together is where we see the importance of that going forward.
So touching on what you raised, duty to care, right? So of course we've got the COVID situation right now that is front and center, but we also have evolving situations in the world like Afghanistan right now, and a large number of people having to be evacuated quite quickly. Now with situations like this, and I'm sure that they will unfortunately keep cropping up through the years, how does a travel management company and how do organizations kind of manage those rapid responses to situations like this?
Yeah, so a lot of this comes through a company making sure that they have plans in place and well-informed, whether that be through their human resources group, whether that be through their security teams, and sometimes that's physical security teams, making sure that they have plans in place and an idea of what would happen and when there's these world events. And then springing into action, a company like CWT to make sure that we can, on behalf of those companies, make sure that we're looking out for the safety of those travelers. And we make sure that we can get those travelers out of a location where they may not be safe and back to a place where they have that safety. And that's the working together of this and making sure that we're able to bring all of our resources forward to be able to do that for people. And that becomes a very important part of it. The other part that we've seen an increase and has been in the industry is around the concept of pre-approval for travel. And that may be based on a location they're going to. It may be based on the type of trip and what solutions can be there to make sure that before someone does even book that travel or before they take the trip, that the company knows that it's complying with all of their policies and make sure that they
Right.
know where they're going.
And of course, at the end of the day, there is a contingency plan to evacuate people and get them to somewhere safer.
Absolutely.
So,
And we do that, like you said, unfortunately, we do that more than you would like, but it's what we're very good at, right?
true.
Is making sure that we can do that, and we look out for those travelers. We touch base with them personally and make sure that they can get back to their families.
Yeah, it definitely makes sense. And of course, as you said, the duty to care, the onus is always there with the organization to make sure that the people are safe and taken care of. So, for this entire duty to care kind of concept, what are the technologies that you guys leverage, and what do you see other corporates that need to, what do they need to do to kind of be in that space or have that capability to take care of the people?
Yeah, this comes all around kind of data and making sure that all of that data is brought together so that we know the flights that a traveler has got on, that we know the hotels they're staying in, ground transportation that's taken place, and make sure that you have all of that information where you can quickly get that information to the corporation. They can pull it up. They can see a heat map of what may be going on in the world and where their employees may be. And then we're also looking out for that when we know world events have taken place. We also know where those travelers are. So this comes back to having all of that data aggregated and being able to act on that and make sure that that we're able to serve up that information very quickly to those corporations, to the travelers, so that decisions can be made based off of the risk, right? And that may be based off of what their policies and, like you said, contingency plans are. But this comes back to having that end-to-end information and data on where that traveler may be at any point in time, and making sure that we can serve that up for the companies to make those decisions.
Yeah. So I think we have basically covered what the world currently is and how to take care of one's employees and what are the technologies that are going to lead forward. My final question to you, John, is what are your mantras, as it were, for organizations to keep in mind in this new normal and the ever-evolving travel space right now?
Yeah, so we look at it from our perspective around one, like I said, the need to get people connected, face-to-face connections, and in some cases the hybrid solutions that we've talked about, and making sure that companies can get back to running their businesses as they need to, and what the important part that we play in that, making sure that goes forward. Making sure that we can connect those people. And I think we're starting to see other interesting trends as we go forward around sustainability and what we can bring to bear around information for companies, and making sure that they're looking out for their best interest for their travelers, for their corporations, to keep that moving forward. Growth is going to be so important around the world economy as we get back on our feet in different companies, and we feel like travel is a very important part of that. Has it shifted? Absolutely. And will it look different in the future? For sure. But our role in that is to make sure that we're looking forward, that we have the right strategy to be able to kind of play that out with our customers jointly, and make sure that we can bring that together, and make sure that safety is taken into consideration, but that really that personal connection continues to come back to where it had been before, and making sure that we can help companies thrive going forward in what we do best.
That definitely does make sense. And yeah, for organizations, as you mentioned, it is important for that growth to continue and that in-person meetings, those relationships to be reforged, as it were. John, I want to thank you so much for taking us through this quite difficult scenario and this difficult space right now. I'm sure our viewers would have got a deep insight into where travel is going and what companies are doing to kind of manage the risks in this new normal of us. And I want to thank you for joining us today. And I want to thank the audience also for joining us today. Please do like, follow, and share the content if you like it. And we look forward to having you back the next time.
I really appreciate your time. Thank you. Thank you for the conversation.
Thank you so much, John. Take care. Sean, we good?